Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, theys and them, all you citizens of the world, welcome to another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. I'm Michael James. I'm up here in Chicago's 49th Ward, and this is our show for the week of July 17th. And we are recording it a couple of days early, July 15th. Our guest today will be an election lawyer, Ed Mullen, and the musician Swamp Dogg. So stay tuned for some really good interviews and some interesting folks. A little bit about the show for any of you who may be new to it. We go way back to the Heartland Cafe when we used to do it from the stage. Then when the pandemic hit, we started doing it via Zoom. It allowed us to go around the country, even around the world. And we continue to do it weekly from my kitchen. And I'm sitting here in the kitchen with my growling dog, my wife, and a couple of guests, and we're ready to roll. A couple things I want to call your attention to. Trump's war on Iran continues. ICE killed people in Maine and in Houston. And in both cases, neither of them were targets of the ICE raid or the ICE pulling over of vehicles. ICE has since said they are going to discontinue traffic stops for a while. Trump, of course, said today he wants them to continue. It's really a crisis in our country that this has continued to go on. And not only in those places where people killed, but in Chicago, there's been stepped up ICE activity. And of course, we'll be reporting that over the weeks to come. One other thing I'll call your attention to is Pete Hegseth, the head of the U.S. military, has denied promotion of 9 people, women and people of color, to positions they deserve to be vice admirals or something to that effect. All that said, it's rough out there. Continue to do good in the world. We have months to go until the election. Pay attention to people who are running, how we turn out the vote. On a sadder note, or another note, in memoriam, Ed King, who was 89, a veteran of the Mississippi civil rights struggle, has died. He was a minister, had been disfigured in an attack on his life. He became what one historian called the most visible white activist in the Mississippi movement. Okay, we're going to take a little musical break. We'll hear a little bit of Swamp Dogg's music, and we'll be back with Ed Mullen, lawyer and public policy advocate. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial, or however you're getting live from the Heartland.
Away. You slipped upon the floor and hit your head. And all the angels say just before you passed away, these were the very last words that you said. Please don't bury me down in that cold, cold ground.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of July 17th. I'm still Michael James, and I'm here with my friend from the 49th Ward, Ed Mullen. He is a lawyer, a public policy advocate here in Chicago. His legal practice focuses on representing victims of discrimination, sexual harassment. He represents clients in employment disputes, represents candidates and elected officials in election law and related matters. He is an all-around good guy, and he just coming off a victory around the Chicago school board candidates. Why don't you start with that, Ed? Give us a side of good morning. Tell us what that victory was all about.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on again. It's always nice to talk to you. The Chicago School Board, for the first time this year, will be an all-elected school board. 2 years ago, half of the school board was elected for the first time, and this year we'll have the first fully elected school board in the city of Chicago. We had 21 open seats. Almost all of the candidates that were in competitive races had at least one challenge, and there was a single challenge that was running through at least 20 of the different candidates that had filed their nomination papers, and that was what we call the dual circulation objection. And essentially what the objector was arguing was that if a person had circulated a petition for a Democratic candidate to be on the ballot for the March 17th primary, they couldn't then circulate a petition for a nonpartisan candidate on the November ballot. And that stems from a rule that says you can't circulate for Democratic or Republican Party candidates in the primary and then circulate for independent candidates in the fall. And that makes sense because independent candidates run against Democrats and Republicans. And there are lots of public policy reasons why you wouldn't want people to, voter confusion, games that people can play, etc. But those public policy considerations and the language of the statute don't actually apply to nonpartisan candidates. But there is a provision in the law that says where not otherwise consistent, rules that apply to independent candidates should also apply to nonpartisan candidates. And so they tried to take these two provisions of law and put them together and say that if you circulated for a Democratic candidate in March for the primary, you couldn't circulate for a candidate that's nonpartisan. But the First District Court of Appeal in Illinois has said specifically that this rule does not apply to nonpartisan candidates. The reason I think they brought this objection was because that case was relating to a consolidated election for a municipality. It was not a case where you had a primary and a general election. So they were saying it only applied to the consolidated election. And the board heard argument on that objection for all of the 20 some odd cases that it was made in, and made a joint ruling that that objection would be stricken from all of the objectors' petitions and would be deemed to be an invalid objection, which I think is legally and from a public policy standpoint, the absolutely correct ruling.
Well, I'm glad you won that one. Let me ask you, do you have a sense, were the challenges across the board, all 21, were they from, let's just say, elements not as progressive as the candidates?
Absolutely. In this case, most of the candidates who received objections were more progressive, either supported by the CTU, appointed by the mayor last cycle, or otherwise more on the progressive side of the spectrum than the ones that were not objected to at all. Absolutely. And, we know that the money is coming from, folks that are opposed to CTU and the mayor having influence over the school board elections.
For people who don't know about the CTU, that's Chicago Teachers Union, and they are quite a powerful outfit in this town, and most of the time we like them. And Ed, one of the things that's going on in the country is a lot of what I would say is malfeasance around our elections and attempts to suppress the vote. They're coming from on high. I'm sure that happens from the lowest level all the way on up. You and I both know that ICE has been more active again recently, not only in Chicago. There have been, as we said at the outset of the show, 2 murders or assassinations of people by ICE in the last week. What happened up in Michigan in ICE's attempt to come on the scene during an election?
Right. Well, let me preface this by talking a little bit about what happened in Illinois in our primary election, because there were a lot of organizations, immigration rights organizations, the Chicago Civil Rights Committee, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, I forget the exact name, and a lot of the candidates, as well as the Attorney General's office, did a lot of work to prepare for what might have happened in Illinois in the primary, because we thought it might be used as a training ground for what they might try in November. And really nothing happened on election day. There was some sightings of ICE out in Schaumburg, in a place where they were not usually seen, but it didn't seem really coordinated, and it didn't seem related to the election. So, I think folks were a little bit pleased and mildly surprised that there was nothing that occurred on election day in Illinois. But we had we've had situations up in Michigan where we haven't had election day yet, but that ICE has gone into the polling places and tried to enforce immigration laws inside the polling place. And there's concern that that's going to escalate as election day approaches. And the difference between Illinois and Michigan, of course, is that Michigan is much more of a swing state than Illinois is. So it makes sense that they would try this out in Michigan. And so I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens on primary day in Michigan in early August, and I think we should be watching that very carefully.
How does this relate to the feds going into Atlanta and wanting to look at the polling place and get the numbers, et cetera? That's been in the news.
Yeah, it's been in the news. It's sort of a different type of issue, though. You've got ICE, which is trying to suppress the vote and make it so that it's more difficult to actually get to the polling place and cast your vote, and that people might not show up at the polling place because they're fearful of it. So that's on the voting end. But the Department of Justice and some nonprofit organizations on the right side are trying to make it so that it's more difficult to count the votes once the votes are cast. And so there is some concern of the government seizing voting machines on election day before the votes are actually counted, to try to make sure that votes that are leaning Democrat are not counted. We see out in California, Governor Newsom has taken steps to pass a law making it illegal for anyone other than state election officials to seize or to have control over the election machines. Of course, the courts are going to have to decide whether, federal authority versus state authority controls in that type of a situation. But I think it's going to be very interesting to hear what the president has to say in his live address Thursday this week. And I don't know when this is actually airing.
We don't come up until Friday morning, so we're going to miss that. Yeah. But I assume that he's going to talk about voter fraud and, just try to scare us to death.
Yeah. And there was a very interesting interesting quote. It says, if we allow elected officials to violate the law in cases of emergency, they will create emergencies so that they can break the law. And it seems like that is what is the theory here. And they're attacking this at all sides, right? They're not just going after one piece of the process. They're going after, intimidating people going to the polling places, intimidating people who are trying to count the votes in a fair manner. And what they're also trying to do is make it more difficult for people to use the vote by mail system. And we had a Supreme Court case that came down last week where the administration and the Republican National Committee had sought to invalidate a Mississippi law that allowed for the counting of vote-by-mail ballots after Election Day as long as they were postmarked by Election Day. And that's how, a lot of states around the country, including Illinois, count their votes. And so the Supreme Court said it was okay as long as the ballots were postmarked by Election Day for the state to allow them to be counted when they were received after Election Day. And that was a surprising victory in some extent. It shouldn't be surprising. It should have been an open and shut case. But the fact that we had 3 or 4 Supreme Court justices that thought that federal law could preempt state law on voting, number one, and number two, that we could invalidate votes that were cast on Election Day that were valid under state law based on federal law. And so that was a good decision. But that isn't the only thing that the administration is doing with respect to vote by mail. They've been trying to create a national voter registration list. And it seems what they want to do is call people who they believe are not eligible to vote, but you would assume that those are folks with ethnic names, whether they be Hispanic, Latino names, or Asian, Southeast Asian names, and call those people from the voter rolls. And it would be done in this case so close to the election that people wouldn't really have an opportunity to cure those issues. And what they're trying to do with respect to their control over the post office is to make it so that the post office isn't going to deliver vote by mail ballots unless those people are on the voter rolls. So while the federal government doesn't have any control over what votes the state counts, what it can do is refuse to allow what it can try to do, I should say, is to refuse to allow the post office to deliver ballots that are certified by people who are not on the national voter registration list. And then the election authorities would never, ever get those votes, and they won't be counted because they wouldn't have been received. And so that's how they're trying to get around their lack of control over the local election authorities. But there have been, I think it's 12 now, cases where federal courts have said that states are not required to give their voter lists to the federal government. And that's been, I believe 12 federal district courts now have said that the federal government is not entitled to that information. But at the same time, there are states that have voluntarily given it and not fought the issue. So the federal government does have that information in some states. Thankfully, those states are not the states where we would expect to have close elections in the fall. They tend to be the more red-leaning states, and so states like Michigan and Wisconsin and other states where we're going to be in a fight for the presidency and the House and the Senate, they've held firm and not provided that information to the government or the federal government, I should say. And it's hard to see how this late in the cycle anything like that could be implemented.
Ed, why don't you just briefly on the courts, from the Supreme Court on down? I mean, every once in a while we get a ruling like the one you just mentioned from the Supreme Court that says, oh, well, okay, that's good. But basically it has gone the other way. But there have been a lot of courts around the country who have kind of stood with the people, let's say, as opposed to the administration's attempt to suppress the vote. Are you optimistic about the judiciary being able to continue to block some stuff, or do you have some threats looming that you're aware of?
Right. So I think that's a really complicated question, but what I think has been most telling is that people who have challenged actions of the Trump administration, particularly related to rights, have done very well at the district courts and, to a large extent at the federal appellate courts. And the reason for that is because those courts follow existing law, right? There's Supreme Court precedent, there's appellate court precedent, and the district courts follow that precedent. And even a lot of Trump appointees and Republican appointees have been, applying the law to say that the Trump administration is overreaching and, potentially violating federal law and what they're trying to do with mail-in ballots and some of the other voting-related issues. But once it gets up to the Supreme Court is not as bound by precedent, even though they stare decisis is supposed to be a very well-ingrained theory in law that you follow existing precedent, you don't reverse it, you can modify it, you do it incrementally. This current Supreme Court seems to have ignored that theory in a lot of cases and is taking very significant jumps in changing the law relating to voting rights. And I think the recent case on the Voting Rights Act, that we could spend a whole 20 minutes talking about, is emblematic of what they have done, not just on the substance, but also on the procedure and the implementation. What I mean by that is when the courts found several years ago that the Alabama map violated the Voting Rights Act, they said it violates the Voting Rights Act, but we're not going to change the way this election that's upcoming is going to be run because it's too close to the election. It's called the Purcell principle. And in this case, when they found that the Louisiana map was constitutional under the Voting Rights Act, they stopped the election in the middle. That people had already been voting in the election, and they stopped it to redistrict so that they would take away the majority black or a majority black district in the state of Louisiana. So on the substance, they were hostile to the Voting Rights Act. And then in the implementation of their decision, they were, I believe, hypocritical in allowing the decision to go forward in this election in the fall, when they hadn't done the same just 2 years ago, when the Democrats had won this similar issue in Alabama. So I am not very optimistic about how this Supreme Court is going to resolve any issues that might come up in the November election. I would be very concerned about any issues that come before them in November.
I was going to ask you about Save America Act, but we'll save that. We only have a couple minutes left, Ed. So what do you think people should be doing to protect the vote, to protect our upcoming elections, since an awful lot of our futures will depend on what happens?
Yeah, so speaking specifically to people in Illinois, we have an organization in Illinois called Operation Swing State, where people who live in Chicago and know the outcome of the November election in Chicago and can early vote in Chicago, they go to Michigan, they go to Wisconsin, and there are multiple organizations doing this. I don't want to necessarily, limit it to Operation Swing State. It's just a good example of it. But I think this is a really important election because, everyone says it's the most important election of your lifetime. But I do think that the outcome of this election, really is going to determine whether we have a functioning democracy in the country come 2028. And I know that might seem hyperbolic, but I do truly believe that.
Ed, I want to thank you for coming on, and I'm going to invite you right now to come on again pretty soon, talk more about election malfeasance, because, one of the things we grew up appreciating in this country is we had a right to vote and determine the way things were going to go, and that's been challenged pretty significantly. And our future rests really in our own hands, what we can do to prevent this BS and secure our future. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'll see you in the neighborhood real soon.
Thank you.
Adios. And everybody else, stay tuned here on the left end of your dial or however you're getting live from the Heartland. We are on CAN TV. We are on Spotify and Apple Podcast, as well as Lumpen Radio and WLUW 88.7. Be right back with more live from the Heartland. Our next guest is the one and only Swamp Dogg.
My secrets and you tell me lies. I'm straight up and truthful. You full of alibis. This ain't no circus and I ain't no clown. When you open your mouth, this is how it sounds. Waka 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 waka, waka waka woo, waka waka waka. I'm through with you. Waka waka.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of July 17th. I'm still Michael James here in Chicago's 49th Ward, and it's an honor and a pleasure to bring on my next guest, the one and only Swamp Dogg, a.k.a. Jerry Williams. And as Lynn Orman, our music producer, said, he's somewhere between Otis Redding and Frank Zappa. And, I've had a good time looking at a movie that he's involved with. I've had a good time looking at the cover of his cookbook, and I've listened to some of his tunes and his new album. So good day to you, Swamp Dogg.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Boy.
You're out in California. Where in California are you?
Northridge. I'm in Southern California, and I'm in Northridge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, which is not far from Encino, Sherman Oaks, things that people know.
Yeah, I lived in Oakland and Berkeley for a while in my life and in San Jose, but I never spent much time in Southern Cal. But anyhow, you've got a new album out. And it's like Swamp Dogg Contemplates the Afterlife. And that caught my attention because I'm a little older than you, but both of us are on the backside of the mountain.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your new album.
Well, shit, ask me a question. I want a little bit about it. But that was a question, wasn't it? Steve Greenberg, who's got S-Curve Records, and I've known Steve for like 30-some years. He called me and he asked me, he said, man, let's make an album. I said, okay, cool. I was already with Old Boy, where I got an album out, but I'm with both now. So he said, man, let's make an album. He said, I just got a good feeling about a new Swamp Dogg album done kind of in the old style. And I said, yes, it sounds pretty good. I had some few songs to start off with. We knocked some of them out of the box. And we kept going through songs. And he brought on Sam Hollander and the hell is his name? Mike. What was Mike's last name? Mike Mangini. Yeah. Mike Mangini, Sam Hollander, who are also songwriters. So with them, and then with that, my fiance, Daniela Graves, she writes her ass off. She's super. So all of us put these songs together. Some I wrote alone, and but I like writing with other people for a short time, because what happens is I get into Well, I don't want to call it a rut, but I guess that's really what it is. I get into a musical rut and I got to get out of it. And the only way I can get out of it is to team up with somebody who is a great writer. And that pulls me out after about 3 or 4 songs. But some people think the album is about me committing suicide or death. Hey, not me. I am not suicidal. I mean, even in my most depressed state, I got to throw this in. I remember one time when I was living in Long Island, I got so depressed that I went and got my 38 and took all the bullets out and gave them to my wife, said, put them in the garbage can, because someone kept telling me, blow your brains out, blow your brains out. Fuck you. I said, whoever you are. Yeah, so that's how much I want to live. And
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. And I'm feeling better about things at this age than I did at a younger age. It's more, well, you learn things. Damn, I wish I'd have known that back when. I wish I'd have known this back when. But hey, still got a chance to do good things. So we pulled. It didn't start out as a concept album, but it kind of started bordering on a concept album. And the concept basically is what am I preparing at this time to go into the afterlife? Not I want to get a jet plane to the afterlife. No, I just what do you want to do? And the type of things that you go through that make you want to get it together, like Knock Knock Memories, one of the songs. You know, it's just, I'm thinking that it's about my wife, because I think about her all the time. Well, maybe not all the time, but most of my time. Because we were together for a very, 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 very long and happy time. And it's songs on there like Daddy's Little Girl, Final Approach, which is, we got it on a plane crash, really. That's what. Have you had to listen to Final Approach?
I haven't listened to much of the album except a couple of songs.
Okay, shame on you.
I'm gonna. And I was watching the movie too. Let me ask you about one of the songs you do on that album is by John Prine, who had a significant run of activity here in Chicago. You want to tell us a little bit about your friendship with him?
Well, my friendship with him started in 1968 when he was signed to Atlantic, and I had just been hired as I was the first black in-house producer for Atlantic. Atlantic was getting hits on black artists galore, but they didn't have a black in-house producer, so they needed one for window dressing, and that's what I became, because they had core NAACP, the Fair Play Committee, all of them was coming down on Atlantic, because, you know, they had the chart full of black records. And wait a minute now. Missing my point.
John Prine.
Yeah, right. Sorry, John. So they brought John to me, And he had this song, Sam Stone.
I know that song.
Yeah. And I heard a great songwriter. That's what I thought. And I was right. But I don't know why they brought him to me to this day, when they had just made me head of A&R, black A&R. There wasn't nothing black about John. And I like what he was doing. I like his, I like what songs he had at that time. And I had a list that Atlantic had given me of artists that they were getting ready to drop. And they had John on the list. Now, and the thing was, see, they really didn't have nothing for me to do. They hadn't thought out what they were going to do. They just wanted to close that gap, that black gap in-house. So the people that I wanted to cut would remain on the labels for 6 months. They would give them a 6-month extension. The other ones, they were like zapped right away, which they did. And the people that was on that list was like John Prine, the Commodores, Patti LaBelle, the Drifters, the Precisions out of Detroit. Everybody had a hit record. And I didn't cross them off. But Atlantic only gave me one shot with them. In that, like, okay, if this next record, I almost had a smash on Patti LaBelle, which would have been equal to the Lady Marmalade. I knew she needed another bag to be in. I had a thing called Dance to the Rhythm of Love. Look it up one time, you get a chance. It's, so I recorded them. I recorded all those artists and C in the Shells, who were the Sand Pebbles on Calla Records. They had Never My Love. And they were over. So from the Sand Pebbles, they became C and the Shells because Calla kept the name. And
Swamp Dogg, let me break in here and throw something else at you. I'll keep you going. Here we go. One of the things that's going on in our country these days is a lot of talk about swimming pools, and the guy in the White House painting and repainting and dealing with swimming pools. You got a swimming pool, and you got a movie out about you that's called Swamp Dogg Gets His Pool Painted.
Yeah.
And that movie has got a little bit of a kind of, it's pretty popular. It was here in Chicago, played for, I think, a month for 3 days. I have only seen some of it, getting ready to talk to you today. But tell us a little bit about the movie and how it's doing.
Okay, well, it's on Prime Video now. And I was talking to the president of the company couple of gigs back, and he's still happy with it. It's moving. I mean, like, it hasn't gone backwards, and although it's not like doing a torpedo type thing, but it's kind of holding its own. And he thinks it'll be around for a few years, maybe more. So,
in the movie, you got your roommates are in the movie. Like, you got Mook Star is in it, and I think Guitar Shorty's in it.
Yeah.
Tell us about those guys, because I think they're your housemates.
Yeah. Well, Guitar Shorty, he passed. And, but before he passed, he had been here 18 years. He came here. He had called me up one day to tell me that he was thinking about moving back to California, and he needed a place to stay while he found him a place to stay. And he said, well, man, you got a lot of room there. Can I bunk at your place? I said, sure, man, ain't no problem, but a month or something like that. So I looked around, it was 18 years before. And so, but he was great. I mean, he had a good heart, a big heart, and we got along. Yeah, we got along fabulously. And kind of the same thing with Moogstar. A friend of mine, now deceased, Wally Roker, who was a legend in the music business as far as breaking records as a promo man and having his own label, which was Canyon Records. He wanted to do something with Moogstar. He introduced me to Moogstar. And he told me, he said, man, I think you and this guy together can do a lot. And we met on the telephone. We talked the whole thing. I said, okay, yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see what we can do together. And we worked on some things, and we're still working on things. And that's how he ended up here. In the meantime, I've had people that come back and forth, like Norman Whitfield. Well, he's not Norman Anthony Whitfield, who is Norman Whitfield's son. He produces, and he's a #1 engineer. I mean, he engineered all kinds of things for Richard Perry and just a ton of stuff. And for his father, because he had Rolls Royce and you name it, all those great acts, the Temptations and all of that. So he brought Norman into the business. And he's lived here too a couple of times. And now, he's like, I see him at least once a week. And I've just, Luther Ingram has been here and stayed for, he had that, if loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. He was on a Stax distributed label. But, I've had a lot of people that passed through here. And because I know how I have been a few times, people had to put me up when I was Little Jerry and Little Jerry Williams, the category, took me years to figure out how to get known and not be compared to anyone, because I was like the world's greatest time killer. I mean, if you wanted somebody to kill time on stage before the star, hey, get Little Jerry or then become Little Jerry Williams. And I had a couple chart records as both. So, I'm trying to say so much.
Let me jump in again here.
Thank you.
Back when you were Little Jerry Williams, is that when you were really hitting it and you had 9 different cars?
No, that's when I became Swamp Dogg. Jerry Williams still remained obscure, really, except Jerry Williams never really had a record that went national, except one, I'm the Lover Man, which was a nice size pop hit, but blacks wouldn't play it. Black stations, they wouldn't touch it. They said I was trying to be white. Well, hey, forget that. But I had written the song for Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons in the first place. And while they were in the studio, they didn't cut it. They decided, they ran out of time. So the producers at that time took me into the studio and said, this song is too good for not to be recorded. So they recorded it on me, a guy by the name of Frank Slade. So
I'm jumping in again, Swamp Dogg, because I want you to. There was a time that you were running with Jane Fonda and other people during the FTA period, the Free the Army or the F the Army.
Yeah.
And the FBI came after you, et cetera. Tell us a little bit about that time in your life.
Okay, that started when I became Swamp Dogg. I came out the box with protest music, and I was on Canyon Records with I had a hit called Mama's Baby and Daddy's Maybe, which was real gut bucket blues, but it's so good. And then he went out of business, and I went to, Elektra wanted me. So I signed with Elektra, and when I got with Jane Fonda, I didn't totally understand what I was doing, but Elektra dropped me within the same year that I had signed with them. And the record would take, I had written a song called God Bless America for What? But I had used the part of the line was, God bless America. And then my part was, unless they know what for. Now, they dropped me, and wait a minute, it's interesting.
So Elektra drops you because you're like doing anti-war stuff.
Yeah, they did, and we had when we protested at the Washington Monument. Jane Fonda this was Jane Fonda's thing, and my attorney at the time hooked me up with Jane Fonda, Donald Sutherland, and all of them, and said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" I said, "Yeah, okay." And he said, "Well, you don't get paid, but expenses are mother gator, Said, so although you didn't make no money, you could still put in $2,000 or $3,000 a day as your expenses," which was all right with me. I didn't set the rules. I liked the whole idea of being out there. And we did a documentary and everything. And then Jane went over to Vietnam and was taking pictures on the tank. And people got a little pissed about that. And it was being set up real good. They were even talking about something that I don't think really would have happened at that time. But they wanted to do a remake of Humphrey Bogart's Casablanca.
Wow.
with me and Jane Fonda, right? So I was going to be Bogart. And yeah.
That would be a good one.
Yeah.
Besides doing all this music and all that, you also, and you got a movie out now, but you also have a cookbook out. And I really love the name of it. If you can kill it, I can cook it.
Yeah.
So how often do you cook, and what's the most exotic animal that was killed for you to cook?
Well, I really don't lean towards no real exotic ones, like people eating peacocks and all that kind of stuff. I give the pig hell. I cook everything that's on him. But there are dishes that I learned from my aunts and grandmothers in Virginia. Like I got one in there called Portsmouth, Virginia. Libby's tomato pudding. Libby was my aunt. And every time I say tomato pudding, people go, "What? I never heard of no tomato pudding." But let me tell you, man, it's delicious. And it's simple. It's
tomato is a fruit.
Yeah, it is, and it's a simple dish to prepare, and people like it. They when we did the cowboy cruise a few months back, they on the ship they did five of my dishes, and
right.
had a like eat with Swamp Dogg, lit up, neon kind of thing, and it went over good. Went over real good. Somebody kind of missed the beat in making the tomato pudding. It wasn't quite like what I had in the book. I checked my book. I said, nah. But anyway.
Let me ask you one more thing. We only got a couple minutes left. And I'd like you to dig deep and tell me what was the biggest transformation in your life? What was some event that put you on a different path or enhanced the path you were on? Can you think of something?
The biggest, I've had some things that happen big, like when Gary U.S. Bonds and I wrote She's All I Got, and it was, gold for Freddie North, gold for Johnny Paycheck. Years later, it was gold for Tracy Byrd, and it's platinum for Tracy Byrd, come to think of it. And though there's great periods, and then there's the period where you feel like you ain't worth a damn.
I know that one.
Yeah, so there's a lot of highlights. There's a lot of things that I hold dear, but I can't just break it down to one. But being the one.
Well, Swamp Dogg, I want to thank you for coming on. Your roommate, Moog Star, told me I should come out there. You guys know people with horses. I'll be in California sooner or later, and I'd love to meet up with you in person. I want everybody who's tuned in today to keep doing good in the world. The Live from the Heartland show is here for you. We talked about elections and election malfeasance, and then we talked with a musical great Swamp Dogg today. Keep doing good in the world, because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that Swamp Dogg does. Together we can make a difference. All power to the people. Over and out till next week.
She can. Over the mountain,
Watching the Live from the Heartland show.
You got a dream
awaiting. Air every Friday
I can see it in your eye. It may not come easy,
on CAN
but
TV,
you know you've got a friend.
Sweet Home Chicago.
I'll be by your side the entire ride. Just let me hear you say amen. Are you doing?
Audio episodes go live on WLUW Saturday 9 a.m. on the left end of your dial at 88.7 FM. Streaming everywhere worldwide at WLUW.org.
Are you doing the best you can?
They're available on Apple and Spotify podcasts by looking up Live from the Heartland on either platform, and are also broadcast on Lumpen Radio each Friday at 9 a.m. on 105.5 FM and streaming at lumpenradio.com. I'm Michael James, and I'm glad to have been your host. Until next time, remember, do good in the world, because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Over and out.
Come to limb. Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing? Are you doing the best you can?